Hi, I'm Skylar, and today I'm speaking to Emily, who is a conservation officer at the Scottish Seabird Centre. So, what is it like in your job just on an average day?
So my job, I'm really lucky in that my job is different from day to day. So as the conservation officer, depending on the time of year, it means that we get up to different things here at the centre. So during the spring and the autumn, we spend a lot of time out on the islands because outside of breeding season for the seabirds is when we can get onto the islands, we can access them without worrying about disturbing the birds. So that involves lots of organising boats, getting on boats, getting volunteers together, and having a great time with some like-minded people protecting the marine environment. And then during kind of the summer and the winter, we do a lot of bits and bobs along the coast. So that includes kind of doing beach cleans around the area, doing kind of remote beach cleans, so doing long walks to places that are not as accessible for the general public, and removing marine debris there. And doing kind of wildlife walks and citizen science talks for the general public as well, to try and inspire more people to get involved in protecting the marine environment and the amazing species that we have around the Scottish coast as well.
So, Emily, when were you first interested in working in the environment?
It's a good question. So I think for a lot of the time when I was younger, I loved being outside and I loved wildlife, but I definitely didn't consider that you could maybe have a job working with wildlife. So I think a lot of people that I've spoken to have had the same experience, where if you like animals or if you like wildlife, often people are pointed towards either working in zoos or working as a vet. So I definitely didn't have that idea that I could turn it into a career. So yeah, I kind of always loved nature, I guess the answer to the question is, and it was only after I left college and started to travel around and try out different jobs and volunteer with different organisations that I started to understand that I might be able to work doing the thing that I love.
So, what was your pathway to get to where you are now?
So I went to school and I went to sixth form college, and then after that I didn't go to university. So mostly because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I didn't have this understanding or like this very clear pathway like a lot of people I think do, that have an idea from when they were younger, exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to get there. So because I didn't know what I wanted, I decided to go and try different things. And that kind of turned into 4 years almost of dotting around different organisations and doing kind of long-term volunteering or internships with organisations like the RSPB and Whale and Dolphin Conservation, usually paired with, so I'd be working for free during the day and then working in like a pub at night time to try and get enough money to be able to afford to do that. Luckily, a lot of the organisations that I worked with would cover accommodation and sometimes food, so your outgoings wouldn't be too much. But there's definitely an issue, I would say, in the conservation sector where young people are often expected to volunteer for a long time and sometimes kind of take on massive expenses to get into the jobs that are out there. So that's definitely something that I think it's worth organisations bearing in mind when they're thinking about taking on staff.
So, what subjects did you study, and did that help you in getting to your career?
I would say not, just because I studied subjects at college. So I studied art, English and history, so a really strange mix to be working in kind of the sciencey area now. So yeah, I would say probably not, but it came from not really having the idea that that was where I was headed. I think for a while I was so passionate about art that I thought I was going to end up at art school maybe, and follow that kind of path. But as soon as I started working, like I said, volunteering in these places, I started off doing environmental education and talking to people about nature and the environment. was incredible. And I think I knew straight away that I wanted to work in this field.
That's amazing. So what what helped you the most in getting to where you are now?
So I would say people, really. So meeting people along the way. I think if you really show that you're passionate about something and you're really not afraid to ask for help or ask for advice, then especially if people can see that you really care and that you're really, have a passion for something, I think if you're lucky and you meet the right people, they'll help to point you in the right direction, hopefully. And that's definitely what happened with me, is I was lucky enough to work with some brilliant people that already worked in the field, and slowly, steadily, they were able to give me tips and advice and opportunities to eventually get into a paid career in conservation.
What was the hardest thing in getting to where you are now? What did you struggle most with?
I think I kind of struggled a little bit with the uncertainty. So I think this kind of 4 years where I was working for free a lot of the time, because of what I mentioned earlier about having to find placements that kind of covered your food and accommodation, it meant that I was traveling around a lot. So I did placements around the UK, and then I did a placement in Malta for a year, and I did a placement in Greece. But basically I was just chasing the opportunities that were relevant, where I could get kind of some of the expenses covered, and sometimes places give you pocket money to do kind of training, training experiences, I guess. So I guess, a little bit of uncertainty in that you can't really I wasn't really able to get settled anywhere during that period of time. And I think that's something that a lot of young people experience. It's the lack of opportunities out there when you first try and go into a career, and especially conservation can be very daunting for people. And if they're tied to one area, which I luckily wasn't, I think it can be a real barrier to access to working in this sector.
So does your organisation have any opportunities or volunteer work for young people?
So we don't have a massive amount of opportunities currently, not like internships for under 18s. I work in the conservation area of the charity. So I do lots of work out on the Seabird Islands in the Firth of Forth, where we go out and we manage the islands for the seabirds. So we chop down plants that aren't supposed to be there, and we remove debris that's on the islands. And young people sometimes come along and do that with their parents. But unfortunately, we don't have any kind of structured opportunities available at the moment for young people, not work experience or anything like that. But I think that's something that we're hoping to develop in the future. So watch this space.
What would you say to young people who are interested in your field?
I think I would say keep trying. If you hit barriers, which I think often people do, especially in my experience from the people around me and people that I've met when leaving uni, I think often people hit a barrier where they've left uni, they've obviously got this knowledge and this passion, but again, because there aren't so many opportunities, it can be quite difficult to find your way in. But so I would say, if you're struggling, keep going, keep trying, and really try and talk to as many people as possible, and gain as much knowledge as possible in your spare time, because I think, especially when it comes to wildlife conservation, even just the basic knowledge like species ID or knowledge of the habitats that you're particularly interested in, if it's marine conservation, knowledge of policy perhaps around the area that you want to work in, or the habitats or the species that you want to specialise in, that's never going to be wasted time, because when you do start a career, that stuff is obviously really, really useful, and people can see straight away that you're knowledgeable and that you're passionate because you've taken the time to really get to know the area that you want to work in and specialise in.
So what would you say to your younger self?
I guess I would say definitely to keep going, and to keep trying to find those opportunities, and to maybe, to my younger self, to maybe not be ashamed or embarrassed by, if you're passionate about something. I think sometimes, especially in my teenage years at least, there can be this idea that you kind of want to fit in, and that you want to be similar to other people and have similar interests to other people. And then sometimes I think that means that you can kind of put passions, or genuine passions, kind of to the back, and not be as proud of them, and not talk about them, and not follow them quite as much as maybe you should. So I would say, don't be ashamed if you're passionate about something. Do that thing, you know, and tell people about it and talk about it, because not only is that going to inspire people around you, but it's also going to help people to see what you want, where you want to go, and help you to get there as well.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for chatting to me.
Anytime. Thank you for taking your time to answer the questions. That's been great.